Battle Stations.
Ready.
Episode number 3.
Ah, man.
We decided to call this one the 1% because I think anything higher than that's too much. Every large company has their small percentage of employees that shouldn't be doing that specific job. And they shouldn't be doing that specific job for any number of reasons. It could be because they're lazy, they're not a team player, and on and on. Bottom line, though, every large company out there has a very small percentage of people that just shouldn't be there.
Exactly.
They're cancerous.
Yeah.
These are what we refer to as the 1%ers. In fact, everyone listening now can probably rattle off at least one name of a person that they worked with that simply isn't cut out to do that job.
Yeah, regardless of what you do, especially in our job, but in every job, there's somebody there that slips through the cracks, has no business being there.
That's right. And if you can't think of someone, then chances are you might be them.
Yeah.
Bad joke.
Yeah, we're not naming names.
No, because we're former cops with over 43 years of service. We're going to talk about the 1% of cops that shouldn't be cops. The very small percentage of cops that got through the hiring process and are ticking time bombs. And by ticking time bombs, we're referring to specifically to the 1% of cops that violate the department's use of force policy and wind up either injuring or murdering someone through excessive force. And a perfect example of this is the officer that just recently murdered George Floyd on that video that everybody's seen.
Yeah, and realistically, we know, regardless, we're keeping politics out of this completely. When you look at the number of arrests made by cops on an annual basis compared to the number of serious incidents that occur, that incidence is very low. So people who might be anti-police or in favor of defunding the police or any of this, or you had a bad experience with police, need to remember, in all honesty, 99% of them are good. And we believe that one incident is too many.
Yeah, they're cancerous.
Regardless of anything else that happened in that George Floyd case or anything else in his past, I don't care. One is too many. He didn't deserve to die that way that day, and we believe that. That's why we're talking about this today.
That's right. We're going to talk about the George Floyd murder, and we're going to talk about 5 things that every department can do right now to get real results that will help ensure that someone like this something like this never happens again.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about defunding the police because we all know that this is a bullshit political move. It simply doesn't work.
Yeah, it is. It's ridiculous. There are better ways to fix this.
In fact, NYPD, they got a 75% murder hike compared to last year after they defunded. What section did they fire? They dealt with homicide.
Yeah, it was street crime. It was a street crime unit that was taking guns off the street and intentionally dealing with people who were committing these crimes, and now those crimes are through the roof. And we see what happened in Seattle and the other places. They're out of control. Businesses are burned. People have lost their livelihoods. That's not going to work.
Not at all.
You want those people in charge? I don't think so.
All right, so let's just dive into the George Floyd video, Dave, briefly.
Yeah.
Paint the picture that everyone has seen on the video. Mr. Floyd, he's in handcuffs.
Right.
He's on the ground, on his face. He's no threat.
Right.
There's 4 of them total, officers. And basically, it's get him up and get him in the car and get him out of there situation from what I saw.
It should have been. And that's what I always wanted to do. Get out as fast as you can. They're
just going to get worse.
Right. You don't need those people gathering around the car with their video phones and all that other shit. So just get them in the cruiser. Job is done. It's over.
Right. That's right. Let's talk about who the personnel were, the police officers. The one officer on his neck, Derek Chauvin, the murderer there, I don't want to talk about him. He did enough talking on the video. But the 2 guys that were brand new that had days on the job,
they did.
What a lot of people don't know is they don't know shit.
Exactly.
And then a new guy, and I'm only coming from where I was as a new guy, I knew to keep my mouth shut and listen to what I was told to do. And they were too afraid. I was too afraid to tell a senior guy what to do. Are you kidding me? He's going to shit all over me.
That's because 99 9/10% of the time, listening to that senior guy is going to keep you alive.
Absolutely.
Because 99 9/10% of them know exactly what to do. They would have known how to have taken Mr. Floyd into custody without any further incident taking place. Certainly, they wouldn't have hurt him, and he certainly wouldn't have died in that process. So you listen to them. But in this case, these guys were brand new. 6 days on the road. They don't know what, and I'm not talking about the old Dave Dudley trucking song either. We're talking about 6 days as a patrol officer. You don't say anything because, and I think I mentioned this at the end of the last episode, but what we get in the academy academically, even through any of the scenarios that we practice, it really is different, so much
pales in
different.
comparison to what you get when you're on the street
Exactly.
and living it.
It's just completely different. So we do listen to the senior guys. That's where we learn. And that's the same thing in every profession, whether you're a soldier or you're in business. You have your own ideas, but you listen to the senior people to steer you along. And in most cases, it works. It didn't in this one.
It did not. Let's pretend that there is no camera in this Floyd murder, right? Because it happens.
Yeah, it does.
Where there's no camera, and this rotten cop gets away with it. Do you know that these two fresh out of the academy cops may have, what they might have taken from this? They might have thought, oh, that's SOP, that's standard operation.
Right.
That's just what I'm supposed to do. And it's not.
Right.
Right. It's horrible to think that this guy could get away with murdering him, and then a new guy might think that that's what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. And I don't think that they would have seen that, but again, they didn't know. Afterwards, in the aftermath, they may have looked back and said, "Oh man, what are we going to do if we have to work with this guy again?"
Sure.
But
now the senior guy on there's four guys.
Right.
The
There
one
was
on
another
Floyd,
senior guy.
That's the one whom I'm blaming him for everything. Really, well, not everything.
He should have intervened.
He should have intervened. He should have put his knee in that guy's shoulder, got him off the back of his neck. He's in handcuffs.
Right.
He's done. It's a matter of just scooping him in the vehicle and getting
We've
him
had
out.
to do that.
How many times, man?
We've had to do it, and
I've seen heavy-handed guys on the job
that's right.
doing some serious business and getting involved. I don't want to know what happened. If I say we, there was a bunch of us on scene a couple times that took care of business, but
it's hard, regardless of what you do, to take somebody you respect and that you work with. And in this case, if I had worked with that guy, I'm sure I wouldn't have respected him or liked him because
you
I
didn't
think
know
he
way
was
ahead
a
of
coward.
this incident. He was so good.
I was in that position. You know, I was on the road for a long time, and this was not a use of force incident, but I knew one of the guys I was working with had a drinking problem. He showed up at work one day, and he was intoxicated, and he didn't work with me every day. He worked for a different division. And what really pissed me off is that the other people in that division knew what was going on.
Well, they were ranking guys, too.
Exactly.
They were command staff.
They were command staff. They knew what was going on. This guy was driving 40 miles to work every day, and he's going 70 or 80 miles an hour to get to certain emergencies that we were dealing with. And when I saw him show up this one day, I just, we happened to be at the academy for a training thing, and I had to send him upstairs. I said, "You go to sleep for the rest of the day." And then I had to take action on that, and I had to address it.
Sure.
And the people that he worked with on a daily basis never said a word about it. So I wound up looking like I'm taking this guy who I considered a friend of mine, who wound up getting me a promotion later on in my career, and I'm throwing him under the bus. But
You knew it was the right thing to do.
it was the right thing to do, and it's very hard to do.
Absolutely.
But you got to do it.
You know, without going into detail and not telling war stories, but 2 incidents for me. Right?
Yeah.
They should not be. They should have lost their job immediately. And that's just you and me talking. And there's
man, it happens so many.
every cop probably has some story about one person. It's probably the same person if it's the same era that should not be doing the job. Because
And you tried to get one of them done.
I tried to get one of them done.
And you were completely opposed by headquarters. I was in the same boat, and that's a war story for another show. The one officer, as a matter of fact, without naming names, this happened probably back in 2002 or so when I was still in training division. Now, 2000 probably. And this individual was fired about a month ago. That's how long it is. So
I know who you're talking about.
This individual should have been fired then, and 20 years later,
20 years
he
later,
finally
right?
gets shit canned.
Wow. I mean, just think about what had happened that we don't know about, or what could have happened. It's just mind-boggling.
Made the rest of us look so bad.
All right, without getting stuck on
let's go.
These war stories, here are 5 ideas that a couple troopers with over 43 years of service would implement to weed out the potential 1% of bad cops like this Derek Chauvin that killed Mr. Floyd. Number 1. The probation period of new cops. Nobody knows this because nobody talks about it. The majority of probation is this. You come out of the academy and you go out on the road, and the department gives you 1 year worth of probation, which means during that year, if you do anything stupid or anything they see unfit, they can ace you for no reason. You have no protection from the union. You're just done.
That's right. But it's only a year.
A year's a joke, and here's why it's a joke, Dave. We talked about this before we hit play. We knew this. When I'm on for a year, when you're on for a year, I'm scared. I'm keeping my mouth shut, my eyes open. I'm listening to what I'm told, and I'm not comfortable enough to get fucking crazy.
That's right.
Right? And what I mean by crazy is comfortable. Like maybe I'll whack that guy. You know, some of these people, these 1%ers, they'll play the game until it's not time to play the game anymore because they don't like the game.
Absolutely.
And they're going to do whatever the hell they want, like this Chauvin officer. The probation, New Jersey State Police, right?
Yeah.
One of the most professional organizations I've ever dealt with. These guys got it right. 5 years probation, right?
That's a
Every
great
year,
idea.
they sit down with the man and they go through their records. If there's any hint or sniff of anything that isn't up to their standards, you're gone.
And that's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
You know, I showed you a text I got this morning from another cop who had watched one of our earlier shows and mentioned this very point. And he worked with us on our
I know
job.
him. He's a good man.
And he said the same thing. He said our problem, at least in our department, was that the probationary period wasn't long enough because problems don't always surface within the first year of service.
Absolutely.
They're smart enough to know that their ass is on the line, so they're going to behave for the first year.
Absolutely.
Now, the New Jersey guys, and you're friends with a couple of them, and so am I, they're on pins and needles for 5 years, not knowing whether they're going to keep their job or not.
Sure. And you know what? You say pins and needles. I know what you're talking about. The ones that are on pins and needles are the 1%ers. But the ones that do their job great from day one. They're not worried
But
about.
even so, yeah. But you know what? I remember when I was a new guy. But even so, as a new guy, you're not
That's
quite
true.
sure. The
That's
first
true.
year, saying, "Man, I did the best I could,"
Right.
but now I'm going to sit before the man. What the fuck is he going to say?
Sure. And like so.
It keeps them in line. It really does.
But if you're a good troop, why not 10 years? I know the unions are going to hate to hear this. Why not 10 years? I'm going to be a good troop. Year 11, year whatever, all the way through. So I really don't have any concern with being jammed up. But what I'm saying is,
I think 5 years is a good idea.
the longer your probation, the easier it is to weed out your officer Chauvins here and get rid of them.
We do our best to weed those out in the recruiting process. And then in our training process, at least in our department, we had what was called pre-basic for basic training. And it was 3 weeks. If you were a recruit for our department, you went to pre-basic for 3 weeks before you went to the regular academy for the next, I don't know, what is it, 5 months or so?
Yeah, something like that.
You went for 3 weeks. It is completely physically.
It's just physical.
Yeah, it's very physical and mentally challenging. And if you're not up to it, you're going to get. We hope that you're going to get weeded out in that 3 week period and drop out. And I remember working there because I was an instructor in training division. And the first day those people would show up, and it used to piss all of them off, but it's a very true statement. It's some of you people are meant to be the police, and some of you are meant to call the police. And I can tell by looking at you, you better keep your phones handy because you don't belong here. Now, that may sound like a harsh statement, but it's something that somebody with experience can see, man, this person shouldn't be here.
But what we talked about earlier was, I don't care if your academy's 5 years long, you aren't shit until you're on the road.
Exactly.
Because you don't know anything.
Exactly.
On the road's when you're going to hurt or kill or beat the shit out of somebody. You're going to violate the rules of force as set forth by the department, and you really aren't going to do that until you get on the road.
Yeah, truthfully, only the worst of the worst make an appearance during that training session where they say, all right, this guy's got to go.
Yeah.
That happens very rarely. It does happen, but it happens rarely.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that because number 2 is a more thorough background check with a heavy emphasis on potential abuse and assaults that they may have experienced. Right. Instead of talking about some of the, we're going way back when I'm going through my testing and what they ask you and things that they ask you, and they seem to be like, have you ever stolen anything? Brr, 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 brr. Right. These but a really heavy emphasis on assaults. How many fights have you been in? Things like that, because they're all indicators.
Right.
And if you get something, and I kind of knocked this this guy out at a traffic stop maybe a year ago, and then you get into the background investigation of that to see how bad was this.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work because not everything shows up in a criminal record because not everything gets reported to the police.
Absolutely.
If they have a criminal record like that, at least certainly when I started in the 70s, if you had any record at all, you weren't getting out.
That's right. But you know how many records are out there that aren't criminal because they weren't charged?
Yeah.
But it was still a record.
And we'll get into this later, but they're, in my opinion, they're lowering standards now and they're accepting people who have had this stuff in the past
Absolutely.
on the record and saying, well, I guess we can tolerate this much.
Absolutely.
And it's because we're having a problem finding people to do this job. But go ahead.
All right, number 3, man. Teach recruits in the police academy that they are liable for the actions of a senior officer, that it's okay to report, and do not be afraid to report this or you might be going to prison as well. Perfect example, the Floyd video. Right. I never heard in the academy that, hey, you're going to listen to your supervisor, your senior guy, but if you see something that you know is unreasonable and out of bounds, if you don't act, you're going to get jammed up.
That's right.
I think you're going to start seeing that in academies too. They're liable. We always tell people when we're investigating them, hey, listen, I know you don't want to rat them out, but you got to rat them out.
Right.
Why aren't we held to the same standard with one another? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I would have probably blown the whistle a couple times at least, being a new guy.
Well, and the reasons for this, where you mentioned you're going to start seeing this in academies now, that's another topic for another show, but we're dealing with a different generation of people here. The way that they interact with other people, the way that they develop social relationships now. It's not like going to a high school dance to meet girls. They meet people online, they text each other, they're not going places. So the way that they interact and learn how to is completely different than what they need to know how to do on the road.
That's right.
So it needs to be taught now.
All right, number 4, departments like Minneapolis need to take violations of use of force complaints more seriously. Now, I'm not sure what the Minneapolis PD's rules and regulations are all about, especially as it applies to use of force, but the numerous use of force complaints against that officer that killed Mr. Floyd tells us that there might be something wrong with their process. I heard 17 incidents of use of force through his career. I don't know, let's just cut it in half and say there were 8. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
And I think if they were able to, and again, when you're in the union, when you come off probation, you got a little bit more power. It's a little bit harder to get rid of me because I have protection.
Correct.
Which is why the probationary period's really important. And I know what you're saying about the probationary period. I know unions are going to be pissed about this, but listen, if I know I'm a good cop, I'm not going to worry about it too much because any violation I do is going to be less than use of force. It's going to be something stupid. I crashed a car, Well, I'm not going to get fired for that.
Yeah, and the people who weren't cops also have to keep in mind, I was investigated by Internal Affairs a number of times while I was a uniformed officer in our department, while I was a trooper. And I was cleared every time, and that wasn't because I had union protection. It was because it was determined I didn't do anything wrong.
This was before the union, right?
Right.
Okay.
It was before the union. But what people have to keep in mind is that there's this mental aspect of dealing with the individuals that we deal with on a regular basis. And they're at a situation where they want to assault us. They want to look bad in front of their friends, and they beat up the cop. And when the cop wins, the response is typically like the bully that you went to high school with. He's beating up all the other kids. Then all of a sudden, somebody stands up to him and fights back. And who's in the principal's office the next day making a complaint? The bully's mother.
Sure,
my little Johnny would have never done.
Countless.
Bad guys do the same thing. When they lose, they lose face. They look bad, so they're going to try to make it look like, well, the cop was assaultive, and that's the only reason I lost this brawl. And that happened all the time.
Absolutely.
And it happened to me many times. So, yeah, I've been investigating, and it's high pressure. Even though I knew I didn't do anything wrong, you're wondering, man, is somebody going to tell the truth here? Are they going to investigate far enough to see that I did what I had to do?
Well, at that point, you hope you got a good command staff, because if you got a rotten one above you,
exactly,
you're screwed. All right, number 5. This is a good one. This is one of my favorite ones, okay? All officers should be equipped with body cameras and cruiser cams.
Yeah, they're going that way now.
They're far less likely to do or say any stupid shit when they know they're being recorded all the time. This is just common sense stuff, but before we got cameras back in the late 90s, we were like, oh, shit, right? Because Mass doesn't do it.
Right.
They've got a law down there. Maybe that's working for them. But when we got the cameras, I quickly realized that they helped us in more than one way, right? They're not keeping me honest. I try to do that anyway, but they help you jam the person up because they don't know you have a camera and they're doing stupid shit.
You learn how to use it to your advantage.
False allegation, all that stuff.
Cameras came in after I was off. I was in narcotics and in major crimes by that time. But I know from talking to you guys that, yeah, at first when cameras came in, you're saying, oh man, this is going to be hard to, but you instantly adjust and you learn to utilize that as an advantage instead of a disadvantage, because all the evidence you need is right there on film if you do it right.
Absolutely. So we just went through 5 steps, folks. We don't want to overdo this. And that's all we got. If you have any ideas that you think would work well, please subscribe, of course, and comment. Let us know. And we want to leave you with this. Now, we just addressed the 1%ers here. But the 99% of hardworking police officers that do their job right every day in and day out, the 99% of police officers that don't judge you by your skin color or your political affiliation, and the 99% that would take a bullet for any one of us, despite what any one of us might think. Here's to you. Stay safe and God bless.
Thanks, man.
Crack 'em.
Let's get a cold one out of here.
I think so, Dave. Thanks, sir.
Now, contrary to what you might think, I didn't have one of these in my Cruiser in 1978.
Bullshit.
Here's to you, brother.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, man.